Hey, what's up guys, it's Bakes and I'm back again with one of my random horror reviews. Today's movie really doesn't need any introduction. It took the cinema world by storm, it took the mainstream by storm all last year, which is crazy for a movie, especially one like this, where it is so low budget and has so much gore and blood, but everyone was talking about this one, and today's movie is Terrifier 2. Not that long ago, I went back and watched Terrifier 1, and I did say in that video it wasn't going to be too long, hopefully, till I went back and watched Terrifier 2. So this was a second time watch. The first time I watched it, I went into the drive-ins to watch it, and I had a fun time for the most part. My biggest problem with it the first time round was that it was too long, but we'll get into my thoughts of it now that I have given it a rewatch. But before that, we'll quickly go into the plot. So the plot for this one is Art the Clown is back and he's ready to wreak havoc over Halloween, and his main targets are now this brother and sister duo who have this subtle underlying connection to him somehow, but I'm not going to go into that. Just going to keep this description pretty simple, and let's get into my thoughts of Terrifier 2. Now, I'm going to quickly bring up the elephant in the room when it comes to this movie. As I said, it took the mainstream by storm, and that's mainly because this movie is really brutal and really disturbing, and a lot of people are asking the question, how brutal and how disturbing really is it? In my opinion, it's not the most brutal or disturbing movie going around by far, but the fact that it got so mainstream and it was released in so many cinemas, movies like this don't often get that type of release and get that type of coverage. So for a movie that was shown pretty much globally around the world and seen by so many people, yes, this movie is very brutal and very disturbing, and I don't want to downplay it either. This movie is full of gore, and don't get me wrong, the first Terrifier film, has plenty of blood, guts, and gore, but this one just amps it up again. It's so brutal, and I guess, right from the opening scene, that kill right away, he's ripping heads open, pulling out organs. The most brutal scene in this movie is the bedroom kill by far. If anyone's seen this movie, they are 100% going to know what I'm talking about. You can't mistake that scene. It is so over the top, so crazy, but so brilliant. The gore is insane in that, and as I said, really brutal and disturbing. The lead in this movie I really do enjoy, and if you saw my review of Terrifier 1, I didn't enjoy our lead actress in that. I thought her performance was a little bit off, which is a bit unfair to say for a movie with such a low budget, but it was a little bit off and I didn't really enjoy her character. In this one, our lead is much better, and on top of that, she is stunning. She's also really fucking beautiful. And since we're on the topic of characters, Art the Clown, I mean, there was no doubt from the first movie that he wasn't going to be a horror icon, modern horror icon, but he really just amps it up again and somehow gives an even better performance. He is just great in this movie. All the characters are pretty good. I guess besides the mum, she's a bit of a bitch. And maybe the main character's friend towards the end, I believe her name is Brooke, she gives the mum a bit of a run for her money, but overall the characters and the performances are pretty good in this. So if I'm going to compare this movie to the first Terrifier film again for a second, or if you saw my review of the first Terrifier movie, a problem that I had with that film was that it was almost too simple. It was almost like 90 minutes of a pure cat and mouse slasher in one location, and I feel like it just didn't change up the formula too much besides the scenes with Art on screen and him doing his kills. There was too much in between time, and that can get really stale, and again, for a film that is about an hour and a half and feels very much one location, that can make a movie drag a little bit. This one does get a bit more imaginative and expansive and changes it up a little bit. There's dream sequences. It's definitely not one location, it's a little bit all over the place, and I appreciate that. It's a lot more ambitious, and for that I do enjoy aspects of this movie more than the first one. However, my main negative for this movie is one that I have to stand by. This movie is, to me at least, way too long, and don't get me wrong, I don't have a problem with long movies. This is something I often bring up in my random horror reviews, but for me this movie is just way too long, especially for a simple slasher movie. The first half of this movie is great. The second half just feels like it's starting to drag, and don't get me wrong, I don't have a problem with them building lore for Art the Clown and his background and, adding a bit more substance to it. I don't have any problem with that at all. That was a lot of people's problems with the second half of this movie. Not a problem with that in any aspect. It's just a matter of this movie running way too long. This movie is 2 hours and 15 minutes. It's like, oh my god, does it need to be that long? It really doesn't. The part where it just feels like it's starting to get too long in the tooth is where our main character and her friends arrive at that Halloween party. And don't get me wrong, there are highlights through the back end of this movie that are still enjoyable. But again, I just feel like this movie is way too long. I much prefer the first half of this movie where Art is going around and just fucking with people and killing people and going from place to place and running into our main characters in between. I much more prefer those antics and that type of movie. As I said, by the end it just gets a little bit too much for me and drags, but again, the ending isn't terrible. There's nothing like bad going on screen. It's just the fact that it is too long for a simple slasher in a way. So as I bring this review to a close and to compare it to the first Terrifier movie again for the last time, as I said in that review, I feel like the first Terrifier movie is definitely the more overlooked, obviously, because this one blew up. I feel like half the people that went and saw this movie hadn't even seen the first Terrifier, so in that sense, yes, I feel like the first one is overlooked. And I kind of remembered going, okay, I think I actually like the first Terrifier movie more than this one. I might go back on my word there because I feel like this movie just has more substance and just has more everything to it. It steps it up to that next level. So I would say that I like this movie more than the first one. As I said, the only problem with it is that, in my opinion, it is just too long. But to give it a rating, I am going to give it a 7 out of 10. My original rating when I first saw it in the drive-ins was a 6.5, so it's slowly gone up. I can't remember what I gave the first Terrifier movie. I think I also gave it a 7 or maybe a 6.5, but either way, I think that this is the better one of the two at least. So this was a fun one to go back and revisit. I'm sure a lot of people out there have seen this movie, so let me know your thoughts of it in the comments below. But as I said, this time around, I did enjoy it more. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. But if you've seen Terrifier or Terrifier 2, let me know your thoughts of them in the comments below. And thank you for joining me for another random horror review, guys, and I'll see you for another video soon. Peace.